And today, we got to go after this last one. That's right, you know. Lucius Septimius Severus, Barack Hussein Obama. We should always know when we see these mulattoes, these magic mulattoes that pop up in European ruled societies, whenever it has happened historically, particularly in powerful white nations or nations under white rule, that means a serious assault on African people. It's always meant that, and that's what it means today. So today we're going to talk about Barack Hussein Obama, who's been made a god and an icon. Our people, if you remember, he came into election. He was elected in 2009, and people were crying, and oh my God, change we can believe in. And people couldn't believe that there was a mulatto president who looked like a black man, and he had a black woman. So they were just shocked me out of their mind, even to the point of real, true nationalists who've done work for years completely abandon every concept of true nationalism, which means, one, you have to know who you're supporting. I mean, a basic fundamental tendency of nationalism, you don't just go loving somebody because the whites love them. Particularly when the whites love them, you begin to study them more to wonder if they're good for you. We abandon any of the responsible tenets of nationalism to go supporting someone who has demonstrated by now, as we'll go through the record, of who and what they really mean to African people. So let's go through a real basic timeline, brothers and sisters, just so I'm not going to do all the beating up today. I'm going to let you, brothers and sisters, tell us what you got to say about Barack Hussein Obama. And I know you got a bunch of stuff to talk about, but so that we can be very clear on his record, not your opinion of him, not all of these Negro, foolish, ridiculous excuses for his horrible hatred and sinister assault on African people. None of that stuff. I ain't even talking about that. We're going to go to the record and just see exactly what he has done. These are the things that, not your opinion, not what you feel. Not, well, he can't do this and he can't do that because if he does that, this, that, and the other. You know, it's a ridiculous argument to say you're going to support somebody to get in office, but they can't help you because if they help you, they'll get in trouble. But you're going to still help them get in there so that they can get in there so that they won't help you. It's ridiculous. It's so retarded. It's not even a sensible human, intellectual human position that anybody with any intelligence in their mind could take. But we're so desperate for help because of our situation that even the strongest nationalists have fallen in love with a pure enemy of our people. Now let's take a listen and go back to 2004. This is long before the election. It's 2004. He got elected in 2008 to come in 2009. But what was happening in 2004? Take a listen, brothers and sisters. This is a brief clip of a debate that he was having with a super Negro, Alan Keyes. And actually, in this debate, Alan Keyes actually ends up being the one who ends up being a little bit more intellectually foundational, and probably the only time we'll ever support Alan Keyes in any discussion ever. A debate with Barack Hussein Obama. Let's take a listen.
I'm going to ask you a very quick follow-up question. Do you believe homosexuality is a choice?
No, I don't.
You think it's innate?
I think that for the most part it is innate. I think that obviously it may vary in certain circumstances, but I think that it is something that is a part of their identity. Now,
being the case, Mr. Obama, that being the case, if something is not a choice, if something is innate, then why isn't it a civil right? And why isn't your support of civil unions as opposed to marriage, does that amount to separate but equal?
No, I think there are a whole host of things that are civil rights. And then there are other things, such as traditional marriage, that I think express a community's concern and regard for a particular institution.
So marriage is not a civil right as far as you're concerned?
I don't think marriage is a civil right, but I think that
it's a human right?
But I think that being able to transfer property is a civil right.
You think marriage is a human right?
I think not being able to, not being discriminated against is a civil right. I think making sure that we don't engage in the sort of gay bashing that I think has unfortunately dominated this campaign, not just here in Illinois, but across the country, I think is unfortunate. And I think that kind of mean-spirited attacks on homosexuals is something that the people of Illinois generally have rejected.
Mr. Keyes, on the Channel 7 debate last Thursday night, you said, and I'm quoting you, where procreation is in principle impossible, marriage is irrelevant. You went on to say it was irrelevant and not needed. What about marriage between people who are well beyond their childbearing age? Irrelevant? Not needed?
No, it's simply a misunderstanding. The word in principle means relating to the definition of, not relating to particular circumstances. So if an apple has a worm in it, the worm is not part of the definition of the apple. It doesn't change what the apple is in principle. So the fact...
It retains its appleness.
It retains... It retains... To act as if concepts are laughable means that you want to be irrational. Human beings reason...
You said it was irrelevant.
Human beings reason by means of concepts and definition. We also make laws by means of definitions. And if you don't know how to operate with respect for those definitions, you can't make the law. An individual who is impotent or another who is infertile does not change the definition of marriage in principle. Because between a man and a woman, in principle, procreation is always possible. And it is that possibility which gave rise to the institution of marriage in the first place. As a matter of law,
it's still
as a matter of law
possible
and
in principle.
But when it is impossible, as between two males or two females, you're talking about something that's not just incidentally impossible, it's impossible in principle. And that means that if you say that that's a marriage, you are saying marriage can be understood in principle apart from procreation. You have changed its definition in such a way as, in fact, to destroy the necessity for the institution. Since the only reason it has existed in human societies and civilizations was to regulate from a social point of view the obligations and responsibilities attendant upon procreation.
Now, I know, brothers and sisters, I know you're saying, why would you use Allen Keyes for anything? But in fact, in this particular discussion, as you see, long before the election, Barack Hussein Obama is on the forefront in promoting homosexuality among people. And actually, we have a Negro, Uncle Tom, Mobutu, race trader, actually fighting them, who has a sense of the fact that men should be with women. So let's go on and go on past that, just to name some of the things that occurred during the course of his running for president that should have told us exactly where he stands. One, if anybody listened to him in 2008 when he was doing his campaign, he was very clear in the fact that if he found it to be necessary to drop nuclear bombs on Iran, I want you to be clear, he didn't say to go to war with Iran or to engage in military. He said if we have to use nuclear weapons against Iran, I'm prepared to do that if it's necessary. I think it's the first time in my life that I remember a president actually stating, or someone that was running for president or a president, that they would be willing to use nuclear weapons against someone. I'm not saying that they didn't do it, but I don't remember any president saying it. I mean, he was very clear and definitive, and I heard him during the election saying it, and I'm saying, why are black people not concerned with this? He's advocating the use of nuclear bombs against Iran, which is not a country at this particular point in time that's creating great havoc for African people. In fact, at this particular point in time, it's one of the few countries that's fighting white supremacy. Not that it's promoting black rights, but it certainly is not in the forefront of destroying black rights and African rights. So why would we be comfortable with this? Also, as he was going around his campaign march, I remember when he went to Houston and he stood before, this 2008 now, he went before the black pastors, a black congregation, and was telling the black church, you got to open up your concept and become more accepting of homosexuality. I remember this. And I remember a little small article came out about it, and I was like, wow, is anybody missing this? And again, I was like, why is it that so-called nationalists are supporting somebody that's going to the black community telling them they have to accept homosexuality? And he's talking about bombing foreign countries and invading foreign countries. They haven't done anything to this country. I was like, he's a warmonger to begin with, but before he even got elected. No, he was saying these things before he got elected. And the black community was in such a trance and mesmerized that they let him get away with this stuff and didn't give it any regard. And for many brothers and sisters out there, I know you don't have the greatest respect or appreciation for Minister Farrakhan, so I'm not asking anybody to have a position on that. But I am saying Minister Farrakhan did come out with an incredible endorsement of Barack Hussein Obama. In fact, I would go as far as to say, I listened to it, and he essentially classified or compared Barack Hussein Obama with Master Farad Muhammad, who the Nation of Islam believes with their theology is the manifestation of God on planet Earth. And he essentially compared him, he had a white mother just like Master Farad Muhammad, and he described him very much in line with being God. One of the best and the strongest endorsements from the Nation of Islam in terms of a political situation in history. And what did Barack Hussein Obama do? He came out and spoke out against Minister Farrakhan. So here's someone that's endorsing him. He speaks out against them. Reverend Jeremiah Wright in his church. Now we got to talk about that for a minute because a lot of our people don't know a lot about that church. But Reverend Jeremiah Wright came out and was on the forefront of supporting Barack Hussein Obama. Definitely trying to defend him against the so-called neocons and the whites who were, for very racist, obvious reasons, against Barack Hussein Obama's presidency. And it was Reverend Wright who went out there and was very, very vocal and supported Barack Hussein Obama. And what did Barack Hussein Obama do? Came out and went against Reverend Wright. Now, we know that was political. We know it because when you have some further depth of knowledge about the church, Trinity Church in Chicago, the one that Reverend Wright rules, you realize that even though he was presented as this strong black liberation theology pastor who was more rebellious than the typical Negro pastor, the reality of it and truth of it is that was just a farce. We have to understand just a little bit of background so you understand what happened there and why it happened. And keep in mind, we want you to call in 760-569-7676. That's 760-569-7676. Participation code 948-656-pound. That's 948-656-pound. Call on in, and I will come right down the line, probably about the 8 o'clock hour. But I just want to get some information out so we can get the record straight. We're talking about Reverend Wright and his church, Trinity. How did Reverend Wright get into what they call black liberation theology? He was actually going to school to get his master's, I believe, in theology, and I think he was trying to get his doctorate in Islam, actually. Not that he was going to become a Muslim, but he was a Christian minister, but he was studying Islam. And a lot of preachers do that. That doesn't mean they're going to switch religions. They just study it as a frame of reference. At any rate, the church was beginning to lose substantial amounts of membership because the Hebrew Israelites and the Nation of Islam were growing in number, and a lot of people were leaving the church because they were looking for a more revolutionary black theology. They were sick, and they were basically classifying the Christian church during this period as the white man's religion. And that was the self-stated purpose of Reverend Wright coming and take over the church because they needed someone who could to keep the membership. Quite frankly, the membership was leaving. And so he said he adopted what they called black liberation theology that was passed down from some of the more militant revolutionary preachers who preceded him. And he took that and began to use that kind of fiery black talk in the pulpit to keep the more militant and revolutionary brothers and sisters from leaving Christianity and going to other religions. So that was his motivation for what they call black liberation theology teaching. But to really understand the weight of it, and I'm not going to get deep into it, but I just want you to, this one piece of information should make the point. This is a fact and it's not speculation. It gets much, much deeper, but I'm just going to use the base level fact. At Trinity Church in Chicago, Reverend Wright's church, former church, Reverend Wright supported gay rights. Not just did he support gay rights, he actually supported. And in the 1990s, when all the other black ministers who were quote unquote black revolutionary ministers started supporting it, which was after the faith-based initiative money got put out there where the U.S. government, the federal government decided they were going to pay black churches to promote homosexuality in the black community. It was after that time he really became a strong endorser of homosexuality. But it got to the point where they actually had a gay ministry, and I think they still have it.